Hello and welcome to the Car Care channel. How you doing, guys? I hope everybody's doing well. I am back from vacation. That was an awesome vacation, honestly. We really enjoyed our time. For those that don't know, I was in Florida, in Panama City Beach. If anybody's from there, shout out to you guys. This is a really nice town. I want to say a few things. So many of you were sad to see the Fall Runner series conclude. There's a little bit more Fall Runnerness coming around. If you're in the Chicago area, I am attending a meet tomorrow for a local Fall Runner group. It's at 9 a.m. in the morning tomorrow, and it is at Les Bars. I'm trying to say that name right. Woods. It's just a big old parking lot, I'm assuming, on a forest preserve on Cicero and Foster. If anybody is close and you're in the area and you're interested, even if you don't have a 4Runner, you have a Toyota or anything else, you're a viewer of the channel, would like to stop by and say hello, you're more than welcome to join. We'd love to see all of you there. So having said that, one thing I will say before we start with the questions, I have put a lot of the Toyota hybrid owners or viewers on the channel on hold for a while because of the 4Runner series, but starting Tuesday, we have a Toyota hybrid video that's going to be very interesting to you guys, and then followed by a new Toyota engine assembly, just putting the whole engine back together. So you guys will like that too, I hope. Having said that, let's start with the questions. And the first question is Wilson, 2007 ES350, lately I see an MPG drop. Spark plugs, filters, gaskets are new, no vacuum leaks. I'm thinking about replacing the pre-O2 sensors. Will that improve the MPG? So gas mileage will drop on cars for many reasons. And sometimes, honestly, I just don't want you spending a lot of money to chase after one MPG or two and then find out that this is just the normal course of the car, wear and tear, many other things. But a few things that people normally miss when it comes to gas mileage drops is tires. Did you replace the tires recently? Did you put, heavier tires on the car? Did you check the alignment after that? Did anything new happen to the car? And the biggest thing that affects gas mileage is weather and how you're driving it. If during the pandemic, a lot of people are not driving highway, they're working from home, all this stuff. This also affects it significantly if you're all of a sudden driving all city. Other than the stuff you've done, I would check tires, check brakes, especially if you live in an area with salt where rust is a problem. Brakes locking up, or just lift the car up, make sure all the wheels turn freely, no brakes are locked up. That really affects your gas mileage more than anything. Pre-O2 sensors, pre-Cat O2 sensors, they could affect it, but 2007, that's a relatively newer OBD2 system. You're not going to really get as much effect. And if there's a problem with these sensors, you're going to get a code for it, slow response, stuff like that when the sensor, but you could take the sensor out and clean it. That also works in a healthy sensor. But other than that, I wouldn't go further than that, spending a lot of money to chase after one MPG or two, honestly. Play apps, thank you so much. The vacation was wonderful. I should do this more often with the family. You notice that I just disconnected from the channel, everything else. I actually had my phone on airplane mode the most of the time and didn't really, just needed to unplug from the world for a bit, dedicate the time to my family. They've been super supportive of the channel, and they know that I spend a lot of time filming, editing, doing all kinds of stuff for the channel. So it was a really nice time to spend exclusively for them, and we really had a good time. So, only truth in the world. So you have a 2007 Tundra with 196,000 miles. That's barely broken in. So the transmission maintenance, the question is, I've ordered 3 gallons of AMSOIL ATF and was planning doing a flush. However, I've read some issues on the internet about flushing the Tundra with high mileage. However, I believe this Tundra have had very minimal transmission maintenance, maybe a couple of drain and fills. Hope to get it close to 1 million miles out of a truck with good maintenance. Your thoughts? So honestly, I think AMSOIL makes great product, but I like ATFWS. That's Just my preference, but it's up to you. As far as flushes, at this high mileage, I wouldn't do a flush, especially if you're not 100% sure that the fluid was replaced always on time. I would just do a drain and fill and maybe wait another 30,000 miles and do another drain and fill. And instead of 60,000 miles, do it every 30, and you'll have no issues. Really, the Tundra doesn't have a lot of transmission problems per se, as long as the fluid is replaced. At this high mileage and at this kind of unknown maintenance, you know it's been done a few times, but you're not sure, perhaps it's not a bad idea to drop the pan and change the filter and clean everything at the bottom of the pan. But if you're in the rust area where you have road salt, be careful, because the pan bolts on the Tundra are notorious to break, and then that's a bigger problem. So maybe start by soaking them in with some BB Blaster or some, some rust penetrant, if you would, and try to loosen them up. If they don't want to come off, don't push them because they'll break, and then you have a bigger problem. But I would definitely go with a drain and fill. Don't worry about the flush. So Joe says, make a video about the first generation Tacoma. If I can get my hand on one that is not all rusty, I would, because I don't want to come out and say they're rust buckets, because they're very hard to find, the first generation Tacomas with not a lot of rust in my area, unless the frame's been replaced, which hey, if you live in the Chicago area, let me know and we'll make something happen. So Roberto says, own a 2012 4Runner Limited, lifted 2-inch, stability control kicks in frequently, did a 0-point calibration, but the problem persists. Read that. This is a common problem. What are your suggestions? So when you lift the truck, it's going to change the dynamics of the ABS system and the traction control. But one thing I would think of is, did you change the tire size as well? And that kind of, being a 4Runner, being ancient, the system is not very smart, if you would. It won't be able to compensate for a lift. And the biggest thing about the lift is it happening when you go over a bump, and then it'll kind of lift the tire off the ground and lock it for a second, and that's why traction control goes all over the place. That's an interesting one, actually. I'm trying to think. 0-point calibration should take care of any variation, but the only thing I can think of is, are you having like the wheel bouncing up and kind of lifting off the ground and locking up intermittently, and that's what's making the whole thing go crazy? Spencer, we talked about seat calibration being a possible cause for a passenger airbag engine code. I saw a few videos how to calibrate it, but wondering what type of scan tool would I need. So Spencer, you're going to need a two-way scan tool, if you would. You're going to need a TechStream, works, of course, the best. I'm not really familiar with aftermarket scan tools and their capabilities. I'm actually entering this world because of the channel, trying to find good stuff for you guys. But in the Toyota scan tool is a very simple procedure, but this is not going to be a capability of a cheap scan tool. You're going to need something capable of doing two-way communication. Most scan tools will be able to do two-way communication for the engine stuff, like evap test and this stuff, but for airbag, you're going to need something a little bit more capable. This might not be, honestly, I will say this flat out, this might not be worth going out and buying an expensive scan tool just for this one operation, unless you have a reason to do that. But perhaps stopping by the dealership and just having them calibrated and be done with it would be the better financial option, unless you need an expensive scan tool anyways. So Justin says, I am torn between purchasing a double cab Tundra and a 4Runner, which is the longer lasting engine between them. So they're both really good options, but the 4Runner really comes ahead in everywhere, because the Tundra is great, but if you buy one, unless, I don't know if you're buying a new one or a used one, the Tundra, working on the engine of the Tundra is not as easy as the 4Runner, because it's big old V8 in a kind of a rather hard area to reach. Reliability wise, they're both great, but the 4Runner will have an edge over the Tundra just because of ease of maintenance. And again, the Tundra is bigger, heavier, and the gas mileage really is not great. But yeah, I mean, it's a hard choice, but the 4Runner tends to drive nicer a little bit. The Tundra tends to be a little bit too big, too bouncy sometimes. but the 4Runner is a little smoother. But really, it comes down to your needs and your choice in the end. So Rajesh says, I ran over a log on my front rim, was bent. The tire shop straightened it out, but now getting a pull. Well, the pull, I can imagine that potentially you replace the tire. For pulls, most people run and try to get an alignment, and why is it not fixing? When you have a pull on a Toyota, the first thing I think you should do is check, cross-rotate tires, rotate front to back. Try to find a place where you eliminate the pull. And then another common one with people, mistaking the pull for a wheel off center. And when you hit a log, it could slightly bend the tie rod where your steering wheel is a little bit off center. It's not cause to replace the tie rods, but I would get an alignment in that case. If you drive the car and let the steering wheel go for a couple of seconds and the car doesn't just drift to one side on its own, that is not a pull. That is just the steering wheel being off center. But if you hold the steering wheel straight and the car starts going one way, but if you let it go, it'll kind of lean to one side and start going straight again. That is an off center steering wheel. And that is just a simple alignment to resolve that. But you want to distinguish between the two. That is a common one that people say, I have a pull, but it's actually a steering wheel off center. And when you hold it straight, the car will drive off to one side. So you want to distinguish between the two. So Half Dust, Half Died, he says, what do you think of the old Toyota Venza? Common problems, the best year to buy. So the previous Venza is actually a very good car. They do have their problems, simple stuff. But whatever you do, please avoid the 4-cylinder. If you're buying it new and you're going to take care of it from day one, yes, the 4-cylinder is okay. But most people, for some reason, did not maintain the Venza 4-cylinders well and went with the 10,000-mile oil changes and more. And these engines are notorious to develop oil burning. And somebody will jump up and say, no, that engine doesn't have oil burning problems. Not unless you work where I work, where you see them coming in with no oil all the time. The 6-cylinder is definitely the way to go with these. It really can take a beating before it causes any oil consumption. The 4-cylinder is very sensitive. The other thing is 4-wheel drive. Make sure the rear differential is not leaking oil. They're notorious to leak from the axle seals. And for some reason, they love to chew up rear bearings, especially with the enormous 20-inch wheels. That's the few things you want to look for. Generally, just check the car over, ask for maintenance records as with any other car. Make sure that the maintenance has been kept. If it's a 4-cylinder, I want to see 5,000-mile oil changes on the dot. If it's 10,000 or more, I would walk away from the 4-cylinder and play it safe and go with a 6-cylinder. They're really good cars, but they have their quirks here and there, but nothing crazy. Just check for leaks, check for obvious noises and problems, and you should be good. So YouTube Karma says, does catalytic converter cleanings damage or work? I don't have any issues with mine, nor did any code set off. Just wanted to know from a preventative point of view. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's the theme with Toyotas. Catalytic converter cleaners, they have a 50-50 chance of working or damaging. So why take the chance? I would say if the car is healthy and you drive it on the highway, when it comes to catalytic converters, you notice the cars that don't drive on the highway, when you take them on the highway and you kind of give it a little bit of an Italian tune-up, you'll smell that rotten egg smell. And that's all the stuff that are stuck in the catalytic converter just gets blown out, and now you smell it. If you drive your car regularly on the highway, you don't have problems. I wouldn't worry about any cleaner from preventative. If you don't drive your car on the highway, perhaps take it on the highway whenever possible safely. Just give it a good couple floors, let it run through the RPM range, and that's really will do a lot safer and better effective cleaning than any cleaner you will add. And that's that. Otherwise, if you don't have any problems, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So Brian says 8AR FTS engine reliable. Our turbo engine's unreliable. So that engine is okay. So far, we haven't really heard a lot of issues with the turbo ones. But with turbo engines, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when things happen. And that's the reality of turbos. I have a turbo car, and it's not a Toyota, but I very well know that one day something's going to happen because turbos, they spin at very high RPMs, and heat is a problem for turbos, and that's just the way it is. But Toyota seems to be the last in the pack, at least on the Lexus side. There's no Toyota with a turbo so far. But on the Lexus side, we do have this engine and a few other options that have turbos. So far, there are no big issues where, oh my God, they're terrible. This was the worst idea in the world. But they are a few years in. We're not like 10, 15 years in, so I can tell you, no, they're solid. They're not going to be solid. There are going to be issues at some point, but so far, they've been good. So let's see here. Victor Ramirez says, why does Toyota want me to clean out the valves for a Toyota, and is the money worth it to do it? And is it safe to drain and fill your transmission fluid from the dealership? So when you say clean out the valves, you probably mean like a fuel induction service, whatever. Honestly, these fuel induction services, they work, but you need to ask yourself a question. Do you drive this car locally all the time, like all city driving and all at low speeds and idling and this and that? In that case, perhaps it will be useful over time to clean out your the top of the valves, everything, all the combustion chamber. But if you regularly drive on the highway where you're always driving at higher consistent RPMs and flooring it to get on the on-ramp on the highway, you're really doing that automatically, and you're not going to have heavy buildup. I've been inside engines, and I've seen the high mileage car with regular highway miles. You take the engine apart, everything looks clean. And then you see the old lady car that only drives to the store and back, all short trips, pristine car with 20,000 miles, but has all kinds of carbon buildup because old lady drives very safe, not like me where I have a heavy foot and always driving on the highway. So that's the question you want to ask yourself. And when it comes to the transmission fluid drain and fill from the dealership, absolutely. I mean, the dealership will use ATF-WS. Hopefully, some dealerships don't. But if you're doing that, specifically request that they use bottles of WS ATF, and that's the safest way. There's no other problems having a dealership, of course, do the fluid drain and fill. So Jorge says, what do you think of an 08 Sienna 3.5, 240,000 miles for $2,000? I think cheaper is not always better when it comes to cars, and that price is a little on the low side, but depends. If this is a 240,000 miles of highway miles, one owner really took care of the car and did every single maintenance, it just got to a point where it's like, yeah, it's time to move on from this car. I'm tired of looking at this same dash for all these years. Yeah, then that would be okay. But if this is a car that's falling apart and ready to hit the hay, if you would, I would walk away, because then it would be $2,000 to buy the car and another $2,000 just to keep it going. And then at that point, why don't you just look for one with normal miles, or the miles is not the issue here, the maintenance and the current condition of the car. Always check these cheap cars when you buy them, because they are cheap for a reason, and it'll always come back and turn out not to be cheap. I don't understand people that buy a car very cheap that needs a lot of work and then end up spending a small fortune to end up with a car that is okay, but then now you're at the same price of a good one that you could have bought good from day one, and it just doesn't make financial sense unless you're doing the work yourself. In that point, you might come ahead, but that really depends on the overall condition of the car. So Loose Cannon here, fellow tech here. Are you seeing much rodent damage on later models? Just had my first case of main harness destroyed on 2020 Corolla. Does Toyota still use soy-based insulation? Fed up using rat tape. Well, I hear you there, brother. You know what? Honestly, I can't confirm or deny the soy-based stuff. Yes, it could be true, but I don't have anything official from Toyota that says, oh yeah, we use soy-based stuff. And I can see why people get upset over that, but I drive the same car as you guys drive. I don't like or custom order one from the factory that doesn't have soy base or the same material or whatever it is that they use. But Yeah, I still see a lot of cases, but here is something for you. I recently had, not recently, maybe a few months back, I had a TRD Pro 4Runner. It was like a 19 or a 20 or whatever the year, I don't remember the year exactly, that was completely chewed up. Now, this is an ancient 4Runner that's basically the same wiring from 2010. And I also very recently seen a new Prius, almost a brand new Prius that was completely chewed up, RAV4s. So it's still there. It'll still affect the newest models. But rodent damage has more to do of where the car is parked and where are the conditions. Like if you park it in a garage, I see people leave dog food, all kinds of, some people leave their garbage can inside the garage out of space. They have no other choice. You want to investigate why are you getting rodent damage and not, say, your neighbor, your family member, your friend. That is how the disasters start, with rodent damage. For everybody else, loose cannon, yes, yeah, it's rodent town, especially right now, springtime. It's all over the place. They're everywhere. And we recently had a 2021 RAV4. Now I'm remembering it. It was not a wiring damage, but it was more of an insulation and everything. And they started chewing up on some wires, but they didn't cut them completely through. So yeah, rodent damage is still very much the case in the newer cars, and even the older cars. I still see very older cars with rodent damage. So Imad says, I'm concerned about changing my RAV4 hybrid tank. Some owners reported mechanics made mistakes, which caused tank leak. Any tips to avoid the mechanic mistakes? Honestly, this will have to do with the mechanic themselves. I always tell you, if you service your car at the dealership, or even you're going to take your car to the dealership for something or another, recall, warranty stuff, your best bet is always to get to know the advisor and get to know the mechanic personally. Now, you're not going to be buddies, outside, and he's going to do work on the side. Potentially, some mechanics will have an issue with that, but you're going to want to at least know them by face and by name, because then you'll be able to judge. If you ask to meet the mechanic at a dealership and they say no, that is kind of fishy, honestly, because I work at a dealership. I work with a lot of mechanics in my dealership, and most of them would love to meet you. They have no problem. We're just normal, average, hardworking people, just like you, just like everybody else. And you're the customer. You're spending a small fortune in your car to buy it, to maintain it, to all that. I have no problem explaining everything to you, showing you, and you're welcome to do that. But if you get to know your technician and your advisor, this goes a really long way. That doesn't mean that you have to spend an enormous amount of money servicing your car so they would like you because now you make the money. That's not how this works. Remember, advisors and technicians, we're people, and that's just, you get to know them, you know them by name, they know you by name, and you just talk to them. Hey, I'm concerned, I've heard some things, and I'm not doubting you, but could you have a good technician work? Advisors will know who's good and who's not good at their dealership. And that doesn't mean the people who are not good will, they will destroy your car and all that. But some technicians don't have the experience. Like, don't give it to the technician that has never done this specific job. Give it to a technician that has done 20, 30, 40, 100, 200 of the same job and never had a single problem. Advisors do have the ability to know who did that and who didn't. So if you're concerned, I understand, but really the fuel tank thing is a very simple job. And if you have a leak, the technician didn't check anything. Because the first thing you want to do when you're done with any fuel job, as out of conscience, out of responsibility, is the car leaking fuel? I mean, a simple test drive and recheck. It takes really 5 minutes. Take it around the block a couple times and bring it back and check. Is it leaking fuel? It's not, then it's not gonna. And that's, but if a technician finishes the car and they're in such a hurry to turn around and get the next one, well, that's actually on the technician side. I'm a technician, and I would tell you flat out, bad mechanics are just that, bad mechanics. Mistakes happen. Even I make mistakes, and that's the nature of humans. But some people are just carelessly making mistakes, and that's not good. But ask your advisor, ask them, I want a good technician to work on my car, and you will get someone good when you ask. And that's as simple as that, honestly. So Ryan Morris, thank you for your super chat, sir. 16 4Runner, 50,000 miles, transpan replaced 2 times by the dealership because there's a leak coming out on the rear side. Could the pan be bad? Well, that is a good question, and that is something that I've seen before. It's not a common problem, but it does happen. Something is going on with the install, or the surface of the transmission is potentially not straight. There's something. They're either not cleaning the transmission. I don't know if this is a dealership you trust, or this is a dealership that does good work, but if you have a repeated leak from the same area, there's something else, obviously. So the first time they put a gasket, it started leaking again. Well, there's maybe something with the pan. Let's put a new pan. Well, you put a new pan and it still leaks. We have a problem. As a dealership, when we have the same leak coming back the third time, that's not good. They need to keep the car and potentially drive it themselves to make sure nothing is leaking anymore. But it could be that it's a bad pan, but twice with Toyota parts, they're really high quality. Yes, we do get one or two here and there that are defective out of the box. Of course, made by humans, things happen, but that's twice is kind of a red flag. I would be looking at, are they installing the gasket right? Is there material left on the transmission side where the transpan seals, and go from there. So Bartos says, when you buy a new Toyota, how long does the transmission computer learn your driving style? It really takes a few days, and the transmission learning is always evolving, if you would. It'll always change, make small tweaks here and there. But when you buy it new, it'll probably take up to a week, worst case scenario, if you don't drive it a lot. And it should learn your driving style. If someone else gets in the car and starts driving, it'll make adaptation. It'll kind of make small changes to the shift points and everything to adapt, but they're not going to be significant. After that first week, it's going to kind of set the initial parameters, and then it'll make small tweaks over time. So Liam says, we need a U660 fluid change video. I do actually have one, and the U660 and the U760 are very identical transmissions, and I made a video on the U760, which 100% applies to the U660. So Dada says, Jigsaw, thank you so much for joining, sir. I really appreciate you watching. So Dada says, major CHR flaws or defects. Honestly, the CHR has been really good. I don't recall like a notorious problem with them. Small stuff that are random, not a repeating pattern. I think the CHR is a great car. It's when it was made in Turkey and it came over, it's like, I don't know. We've never had a car, Toyota, made in Turkey in the US before, but this one really, I'm very impressed by it. It's a very reliable car. It has a few quirks, like the lack of all-wheel drive, and the seats are a little uncomfortable. And the back door, I hate that high handle. I just don't like it. I think I had a car one time and my kid had a hard time reaching, and it's like, that's going to be a problem. But other than that, mechanically speaking, they're very reliable. They don't really have a lot of issues. So Imad says, and this is a very hard question, which is the most reliable Toyota vehicle or Toyota hybrid vehicle? Honestly, they're all good. There are a few unicorns, like the FRS, which is not really a Toyota, but most of them are good. But more importantly, the which car is how it was maintained. Most people skimp on the maintenance on Toyotas, and that's when the disasters start. Remember, Toyotas are high-quality cars. Yeah, you might get in the car, and I love... Okay, rant coming up, so get ready. Journalists, I have a problem with journalists, and most of them I love, and they are very experienced, good people, but they keep ragging on the same thing. All they focus on is the interior. Oh, there's so much plastic, and everything feels cheap and outdated, and this and that. Blah, blah. Who cares? Most people don't care, and the proof of that is the sales figures, if you would. All Toyotas are good, but remember, what you touch and see could feel cheap, but what's behind the scenes is high quality stuff. So when this high quality stuff is neglected and not taken care of, we're going to have problems. That's just the way the cookie crumbles, if you would. So more important than which car is the best one is how you maintain it, is what's going to dictate if this is going to be a good car for you or not. Honestly, they're all good. There are a few unicorns, few years to avoid. 0709 Camry, the four-cylinder that hasn't been fixed for oil consumption. Four cylinders generally that has been neglected. You see, it all comes back to neglect and problems. That's how the problems start, but most of them are good. Really old ones that are neglected are not good. Really old ones that are really taken care of are good. Otherwise, there's not really one that I would say stand out. A standout would be the 4Runner. The trucks in general are very reliable. Some people will say, oh, they're not great trucks, but they're good trucks, trust me. So Matt says, going to do my valve cover gasket on my ES330 aftermarket gaskets, okay, or absolutely go with OEM. When it comes to gaskets, always go OEM. I have seen so many aftermarket gaskets, especially my special one that I really dislike are the blue ones. They're terrible. And the original ones are not even that expensive to where I would tell you, oh my God, stay away from the originals because they're a fortune. They're absolutely go with original gaskets. They're not expensive. They're really worth it. They're worth every penny. So Farshid says, 2016 Highlander hybrid, 120 volt outlet doesn't work. Dealer wants too much just to look at it. Is this DIY? So I'd have to look at the diagrams, but most likely there is a fuse for those, and you're going to want to find that fuse, look in your owner's manual. That's the first DIY thing I would do. And then after that, it really becomes, if the fuse is good, it becomes diagnosis. If you have electrical skills, you can take the outlet. The outlet is basically a small inverter that converts 12 to 120. That's about it. You want to check that it's getting power and ground. If it is getting power and ground, it's just the outlet itself is bad, and replace it and have a nice day. Otherwise, there is not much really to that circuit. Some of them will have a button to turn it on and off. You want to check that as well. This is a simple continuity test. But it does take, past the fuse level, it does take a little bit of skill and access to the wiring diagram. If, by the way, speaking of wiring diagrams, if you ever need a repair manual for a Toyota, if you're doing a DIY job, you want access to a lot of diagrams, and you're tired of looking online, all that, I will write a website here. And this is, by the way, not sponsored or anything. If you want information, what's a better source than Toyota themselves? That's what I say. You want the original part, buy them from Toyota. You're guaranteed to get the correct parts and, you know, not counterfeit or some of that stuff. But same thing with repair manuals. Toyota, very generously, actually, a little bit expensive, but if you really need the dealership level information, that's the best place to go. I think it's $20 for 2 days. I don't know if it's available outside the United States, but that is the best place for information, for repair information on Toyotas. So Don says, looking for a Highlander, any specific year or generation to look for under 30 grand? So that's a very good budget for Highlander, sorry. And the best year I would look at is 15 and 16. You'll find them everywhere. And although now the used car market is kind of crazy, but 15 and 16 is best. 18, 19 is also good. But then that's when you get into the 30 grand limit. Try to buy ones with good maintenance. If you're buying a 15, 16, you could still, if you're worried about it, you could still get a good extended warranty on them at that age, 5, 6, 7 years old. But try to be careful with the 17s. If you don't want to deal with, there's an extended warranty and the 8-speed trans, avoid 17 altogether. 18, 19, or 15, 16. 14s are okay, but just know you're going to have a few annoyances here and there with the 14s that wouldn't exist in the 15, 16. So I would shop for 15, 16 or 18, 19. So Belizean Diver, thank you so much for your super chat. Drove my 19 4Runner about 15 miles with 4 quarts less transmission fluid because I accidentally drained it. How concerned should I be? don't be too concerned, but don't plan on this happening a lot, because even though you drove with forecourts less, I'm imagining you drained the train span. And if you didn't notice any slipping when you drove it in these 15 miles, you're likely okay, but try not to push the envelope, because that's not good for the transmission. But did you cause damage right now? I will not lie to you, potentially a little bit, but not to a point where I'll tell you jump ship and get rid of this truck. No, these trucks can take a beating, but don't plan on doing this too often. Okay. So is the 2015 Highlander lithium ion or nickel metal? It's most likely nickel metal hydride at a 15. So Lexus man, how was your holiday? It was great, man. It was really good. I need to make this happen more often. So that one says, why did you skip my question? Well, I'm sorry if I did. Let's see. Where is your question? Don't do me a favor, because I don't see your question here. Let me look closer. Maybe I am going blind. I don't see your question though in Power. So if you don't mind, put the question again. Now try to post it now. I don't know if you're still watching or not. Let me see if I can see it. I don't see your question. So leave it. If I never get to it, leave a comment below if you're still watching, and we'll get to your question. So Adam, thank you for your super chat, sir. Does the 2021 Sienna powertrain come from another model that's already proving good, or is it a new design? So Adam, it's not a new design. It's basically an A25A FXS engine, which has been out since 2018. Transmission, same, shared with other models. And basically the whole drivetrain is really shared. There's no reason to be concerned about the drivetrain. It's been out for a few years, not 10 and 15 years, but it's been out for at least 2, 3, 4 years. If I would count right, 2018, so at least 3 years. The drivetrain so far has been good. We really haven't had issues. The first year production, you're always going to get your small stuff, rattle here, this doesn't work right, this needs to be initialized, and small stuff. But so far I haven't really seen big issues with the Sienna. The only issue that we've seen that was worth mentioning is some rattles from the dash production stuff. Again, this is first year stuff, but big stuff, powertrain, transmission, all the hybrid system, not really. I haven't seen anything. And even on the TSB line, I haven't seen. Now I've been off for a week. Maybe that have changed, but I haven't seen big TSBs saying, "Hey, we have a problem here. Let's." So it's been pretty quiet. And if you own one of these cars, I'm not concerned so far. I'm actually trying to get one to film with, so we can talk about some of their, some of their technologies and common stuff and good stuff. Actually, I think they improved a lot on the Sienna in general in the 2021, but. The engine, a lot of people have asked me about the how good is the powertrain as power level, if you would, when you drive. I'm honestly not going to give you an answer until I have put the entire family in the van and put bicycles and everything in the back, and there's an area here where it has steep hills. I'll go drive it and tell you. I'm not going to just take Toyota's word for it and tell you it's good, then you buy it and it's not good. So, Lady Ferrier says, I just bought a 21 RAV4. The manual does not list how often to change the transmission fluid. Yes, because, again, it's like the sealed transmission and sealed for life. But how long is that life? And then there are some areas in the maintenance manual will tell you, well, if you do towing, you got to do it every 60. If you do, I think, heavy load, 60,000 miles. So here, let's make a long story short for you. if you keep this car past 10 years, I highly recommend that you replace the transmission fluid every 60,000 miles or 6 years. It's not expensive, and trust me, it is a lot less than gambling with a transmission that costs a small fortune. It's not worth it. They say it's for life, but I've seen problems past 100,000 miles, bad shifting, all kind, and it leads to even complete failure. There's no reason to take that chance. I would just replace the fluid every 60 and you're good to go. So Paul says 20 Tacoma TRD off-road, want a 2-inch lift, throwaway shocks versus rebuildable. Different valving for different application. I use mine in Colorado as everyday ride and weekend Jeep roads. So honestly, the throwaway shocks, and this is just my opinion, they're both good, and that really comes to your preference. But I think the throwaway shocks are better because the rebuildable ones, you buy them from this company, and I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years from now, you want to rebuild them, and guess what? That company's gone. And I see this, unless you're buying it from a big company that has really been established for a long time. I like the throwaway shocks because they're simple. You don't have to, put the shocks, use them when they're done, get new ones. There's no, I rebuild them and now there's problems. There's this, there's that. But that's really personal preference. But personally, I would go with the throwaway ones. That's just my opinion. So Liam, what are your tech stream tips and tricks? So I am planning a video on that, and I know that got pushed a lot back. I did do a video on how to read diagnosis, light diagnosis on the tech stream. I think that was the fuel trims video. I showed you some live data on how to read it. But hopefully in the future, I will be able to do a more in-depth, dedicated kind of DIY tech stream video. So Bert says 2019 RAV4 was told there was no training for side view mirror TSB. Kind of scared tech will scratch up paint, scratch door panel when performing TSB. They said I was the first one. Honestly, when you're the first one, I would wait, because some of these, it's really a double-edged sword, because the first one you do of any job, you'll be extra careful, you'll take your time, follow the instructions. And this doesn't apply to all technicians, but also the other side of the sword is the first time they do it, they're gonna improvise and kind of figure it out on your car. Yes, I would wait, especially since some people that come to the dealership, I don't care about my paint, I don't care about my car, just fix what I wanted and do it very quick. There's a lot of people like that they just don't care. The car is not an important thing. So let those people be the first, and then you that care, have it happen later, especially with something like the side mirror shaking. That is not something that is very annoying, but it's not something safety or something major where I would tell you need to get this done ASAP. Perhaps wait, give it another 6 months, and then see when they get one, and have yours not be the first one. So David Ross says, have a Tundra where the ABS light is on, the VAC light is on, and traction control. The dealer did a scan, only found that only 4 modules are reading. Is there something I can do? Honestly, this is going to be a tough one to diagnose in this format, because I'd need codes, what they found, a little bit more details. But if there is a communication problem, usually, we try to do the standard CAN communication diagnosis, and that is not exactly something DIY, honestly, because you need the equipment, access to the repair manual, and experience. CAN communication diagnosis is not something simple. Even technicians have a hard time with it sometimes. They don't have the experience. Usually it's left for the dinosaur technician who doesn't mind losing their entire day's pay to figure out the complicated problem. But some technicians just really get frustrated with these, because you get the car and it's like a needle in a haystack with CAN diagnosis, and you can't keep charging the customer hour by hour. I mean, what if this takes a week? There's a point where we can't just keep charging people to find a problem. So we just have to bite the bullet and kind of just eat up our time to hopefully find the problem eventually, which does happen a lot. I seem to be one to volunteer for these because I appreciate the experience, but I do take a pay hit, of course. But experience over money. I think experience will pay over time than the one-day pay, if you would. So Lion Runner, what do you think? Toyota USA not getting 2.8, 4.5 turbo diesels. I really wish I could get turbo diesel for better fuel range. I agree. And folks, for us North Americans, if you would, Toyota, well, not Mexico. I think Mexico does get the diesels, but North America does not get Toyota diesels. And diesels in general are not very popular. They're popular in the big trucks, and I know somebody will jump up and say that, but they're not popular with smaller trucks and cars because it goes back to when GM decided to make the 350 V8 a diesel. That kind of killed the diesel for the normal car. And then Volkswagen with their scandal, if you want to call it that, they don't have good reputation in the US. And I think Toyota makes a great diesel. I've driven a Hilux diesel when I was overseas. Beautiful trucks, and they really perform well. They're very reliable. But yeah, that would be something. Maybe head over to their social media and kind of ask them. That is something that we always ask Toyota. Like, why can't we get the diesels that not develop something? We already have them. Why don't you just bring them over and see what happens? But they don't want to, and I don't know what's the deal with that. So, Bert, about the mirror shake, they can't give you the part unless you pay for them. In the end, you can just buy the parts yourself, but I would wait, or at least ask for a good technician that will take their time and do it right, to, not be the first one, or at least have a good technician do that. So T694RT, I have a 2003 Sequoia Limited 4-wheel drive, transmission fluid is clean. Not sure about the type of fluid. I only had it a month. Should I do a drain and fill Toyota ATF? Yes, and I think that Sequoia will take just type 4. I would have to double check, but most likely it's type 4, not WS. So that transmission is actually every 30,000 miles. And yeah, I would do a drain and fill, even if fluid is clean. Do a drain and fill. That way you're sure you replace the fluid this day and go from there. So Francisco Casa says you should do videos about car maintenance schedule. I do have a series on how to maintain your Toyota. I went over all the maintenance, all the fluids, all the filters, everything in detail, a multi-part series. Perhaps you can find it in the channel pages or go to playlists. You'll see how to maintain your Toyota, and that I did that a while back. I noticed it doesn't get as much views. Maybe people don't go back and see the older videos. So David Ross, thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. Want to work on my truck? Absolutely. If you live in Chicago or in the area, just let me know, and do contact me on social media, and I'll get back to you. I know I'm a little backed up on social media too, so I will eventually get back to you. And yeah, I do sometimes, not all the time, but I do work on the side sometimes. And if it's something that I can film, that would be even better. That'll get you a little bit priority. I'm trying to get you content as much as possible. So Holy Adonis says, what do you think of Lucas oil stabilizer? I really don't use it and don't have an opinion on it, but I don't like it. I don't like any additive that doesn't need to be there. I don't like it when people buy expensive oil and go 15, 20,000 miles hoping that, I bought an expensive oil and they promise this and that. I would rather you do your oil changes on time and not really use the oil stabilizer. This might have worked in the past, but with new engines and tighter tolerances and all that, I don't know if this stuff's still relevant. I wouldn't use it. So Emilio says, I have a 2006 Sienna Limited with 116K. Do you remember just one drain and fill, even though it's only about a quarter of the volume of the fluid, or more than one? I would do a single drain and fill, especially at older age and higher miles, and call it a day. It's not about replacing the whole capacity of fluid. It's about refreshing a small amount of the fluid that will actually refresh everything and drain that bottom pan stuff that are really the dirtiest in any transmission. So Chris Britz, thank you for your super chat. Why did Toyota get rid of the V6 RAV4? And is there anything to look out before buying? I am going to test drive one, and I'm so excited. You know, the only reason they got rid of it is probably emissions, and probably people were not buying them toward the end, even though I think they're the craziest car Toyota makes. Kind of the level crazy of the RAV4 Prime, with, you know, faster than the four-cylinder Supra. That's kind of not a great PR move, but the V6 RAV4 is a rocket, especially if you buy it from two-wheel drive. They're kind of scary to drive because they're not really, the suspension and the brakes are not really made to handle the V6. It has way too much power, way too much torque. I know somebody will jump up and say, well, it's not as fast as a Ferrari. It's not, but it's a lot faster than your average Toyota or what you expect out of a RAV4. Things to look out for. Make sure that V6, and this is the Achilles heel of that V6, oil leaks and head gasket leaks. They're somewhat common on these, and the RAV4 is the most expensive V6 to drop out of the car because they're very difficult and very tight. DIY maintenance is not so bad. Actually, the RAV4 is the only V6 where you can really easily do the spark plugs without pulling the cowl or anything. The V6, anything on top of it is easy on the RAV4. Anything on the side or the bottom, it's kind of harder. But check for oil leaks. That's the biggest thing. And you're going to go through so many brake pads and rotors with the V6 because they're really fast and you're always hammering on these brakes. And if I remember correctly, and this is by memory, the rotors are slightly bigger on the V6 model, but they're nowhere near as necessary. So they always warp and brake pads and rotors. And so that's one thing to anticipate. Other than that, they're really good. They're really good cars if you buy one that's good. Rice Burner, hi to you too, sir. Thank you so much for joining. Lexus Man, Lexus GS300 or Nissan 350Z? Sorry, I don't like Nissan, so of course, Lexus GS300. And if I remember correctly, GS300 has a 2JZ, so you can turbo that, and then you'll blow that 350 out of the water. So how come Toyota dealerships, another question, how come Toyota dealerships in Chicago or suburbs do not offer drain and fill, only flush? Dealerships want to keep things simple. I don't really have a direct answer, but it is simpler for a dealership to do a flush. That way, there's all the fluids replaced. And this comes from the olden days when we used to have a dipstick. If you do a drain and fill, people will pull the dipstick while the fluid is still not clean. Well, that you can't really explain to people, well, we're replacing enough of the fluid to refresh the additive package. It's not about color. It's about what's actually protecting the transmission. So dealerships switch to flushes because after a flush, you pull the dipstick, it's clean, and that's what people want to see. Not necessarily a good idea, but unfortunately, dealerships sometimes have to adapt to customer needs at times, and that's one of them, or it's actually a negative because I think a drain and fill is safer than a full flush. But any Toyota dealership in Chicago and suburbs, I am from that area, and I will tell you, if you go and you specifically ask, I want a drain and fill, not a flush, they should be able to accommodate you and without any issues. So ask them for that specifically. Lexus Man, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. So Dennis says, love your series on the Forerunner. Help me secure my decision on getting a 2021 Forerunner. Well, congratulations. And if you can find one, you're going to love it. They're very hard to come by. All cars, there's a huge car shortage right now. And that's kind of, the other day, sorry, I'll break off and say this. The other day, I was looking at Forerunners, and I saw a Forerunner, TRD Pro, all the options, all the nice stuff, listed for $78,000. Is the dealership out of their mind, or they're just robbing people blind? That's how I see it. The dealership I work at, this is one of the few things that I highlight that they don't do. They sell when there's a situation like this, they try to sell the car at MSRP. They won't give you any discounts, but this price gouging is horrible. People, please don't fall for this. I hope that all my viewers don't fall for this. There is no car that is worth you paying over sticker just to get. If you have to do that, then perhaps this is not the car for you. Don't pay over sticker. It's not worth it. Wait till they're available and then buy one, because that whole dealer thing of gouging prices like that, very unethical, not nice at all. This is just taking advantage of people. That's not right, because dealerships do make a very healthy profit when they sell the car at sticker, and let alone after sticker. They're just gouging people at that point, and I don't like that. SN says, Corolla Hybrid 2020 makes strange sound when combustion engine kicks on low speeds. That's normal. When the engine comes on, it's kind of like, that whole operation going on. But I do need to hear the sound, if it's something normal or not, to be able to tell you 100%. Perhaps film a video, leave a comment with a link, upload it to YouTube, and leave a comment, and I'll look at it and see how it sounds and give you a better opinion. So Gary Radz, thank you so much for your super chat. Is it okay to tip service advisors, technicians for good service? That's really up to you. Honestly, I will say this. No service advisor and no technician expects it. So it's not something that you must do, because technicians and service advisors, they are well compensated by the dealership and they're taken care of. So I wouldn't think that is something essential. But if you want to do it, I really appreciate it, and that must mean that you're really happy with their service. Absolutely, there's nothing wrong with it. Dealerships do not look at that as a problem, but it's not mandatory. So I just don't want you doing it all the time and feeling like I must do it. You don't. Nobody expects it. But thank you for your generosity, both on the super chat and tipping advisors and technicians. So Rio, thank you for your super chat. 2020 Tacoma Sport V6. Do you recommend staying with the 16,000 kilometer, which is around 10,000 miles for American folks, oil change, or go with 8,000? Personally, 8,000 all the way. That's just my recommendation. There's a lot of conditions where I'll be like, well, if you drive in this condition and this condition, yeah, you could go on 16,000. It's not worth it. Oil changes are, although this is somebody else is saying oil's cheap, engines are not. Grandpa Scotty approves of that message, I suppose. But oil changes are not very expensive when you compare it to, issues you're going to have down the road with bad oil change habits. If you would change it every 8,000, if you want to save money, learn how to change it yourself. That way you're saving money, you're working on your car, you're taking care of it yourself, and you won't have any issues. Trust me, especially if you're keeping this truck over 10 years. It'll pay for itself with that extra maintenance. So Mobile Gamer, thank you so much for your super chat. Bought a used 2016 Corolla LE, 98,000 miles. What services do you recommend me have done? So right around that time, you're right around that 5-year range with 100,000 miles. You're going to want to change your engine coolant. You're going to want to, if the transmission fluid has never been done before, I would replace it. This is going to use CVT fluid. Check the car generally, tires, brakes, oil leaks, issues. I don't expect you to find anything, but tires and brakes you could, but other stuff I don't expect you to find much. Otherwise, really just drive the car. Maybe get an oil change if you just bought it, and that's about it. At 120, you're going to need spark plugs, and you're all good to go. So Chris, thank you for your super chat. If a V6 RAV4 is in good shape, what is a good life expectancy? The few I'm looking for are between 110, 135 for around 10, 13 in my area. So they're good. They're good engines. They're really good. They're good cars generally, but rust kind of complicates things. buying one with 110, 135, you can expect them to easily go to 200,000. But toward the end, at some point, you're going to have oil leaks here and there, and things kind of start falling off around 200,000 miles. But if you don't mind a little bit of oil leak here, a little bit of, small leaks here and there, you're good. The all-wheel drive model potentially is problematic on the V6, especially if you like these hard launches, and that's something that's gonna kind of destroy this car quickly. I noticed the sleeve on the what is it called? The transfer case tears off, and then it creates a leak, and now you're looking at a transmission replacement if you want to fix that leak. If you could stick with a two-wheel drive, if you did go with an all-wheel drive model, try to be gentle, especially on these takeoffs. It's just a little too much torque to be repeated those kind of pedal to metal takeoffs on this transmission. Otherwise, they're really good cars. Just keep up the maintenance. Make sure the one you're buying is, taken care of. That over 100,000 miles is not an issue if it's been taken care of. 50,000 miles with neglect and lack of maintenance is not good. So Peter, thank you for your super chat. Would you recommend DIY cleaning Prius battery cooling fan or leave it to the pros? Also have rattle something loose below 2010 Prius. So the rattle is probably a heat shield, very common on these. Nothing crazy about it. You can replace it or repair it. The battery cleaning is very simple as long as you are handy or you have some experience with working with cars, and make sure you connect everything back. Make sure all the clips go back where they're supposed to be. Just kind of an overall attention to detail when you do this job. Otherwise, it's DIY. It's not hard. I want to film that, but I didn't get a chance yet to get one in the shop where it needs that. But they're not hard. Just attention to detail. Keep everything where it's supposed to be. All the clips, all the little things, and you should have no issue. So Jay, thank you so much for your super chat. How important it is to retorque the prop shaft on a 4Runner at service intervals? I think the consensus is that dealerships never do it, and that consensus is most of the time correct. I try to do that. Honestly, I will tell you why dealerships sometimes don't do that is I don't think I have found one that is loose. It's always right on. So most technicians assume if 2,000 of them are good, the 2,001st is also good. So we're just going to leave it alone. But I think if people are paying for the service, it just takes the technician 2 minutes, get the torque wrench, okay, we're good. You don't even have to do anything else. So it wouldn't hurt, but I wouldn't say if it hasn't been done, I would freak out because really I haven't seen a single one that is even slightly loose from time, and that is just it's the maintenance requirement, and do it and be done with it. I think it takes 2 minutes. It wouldn't hurt. So Lion Runner, thank you for your super chat, and thank you so much for watching the live stream, sir. I appreciate it. So let's go to another question. Still waiting on my email response. I know, guys, the vacation kind of added up to it, but I'm working on it. Every once in a while when I find time, I'll jump on the emails and try to get as much replies as possible, but it's a lot with filming, editing, family, work. It gets much, but just know this. If you send me an email, try not to send me an email that is urgent because you're not going to get a timely response, but I will always get back to you. Just give me some time. I will get back to you. So, sorry, I think I jumped a bunch of them. There we go. Leonardo says, how reliable is the 2.7-liter engine in the 2019 Highlander? So, Leonardo and everybody else, the 4-cylinder, that's the 1AR FE. That's kind of a close brother to the 2AR FE, but it's just 2.7 instead of 2.5. It is reliable as long as you change the oil every 5,000 miles. I know there are the owner's manual will say 10,000 miles, 1 year. If you change the oil on that engine every 5,000 miles or 6 months, you're not going to have issues. If you don't, you're going to have oil burning issues. And this engine is largely unchanged for all these years, so the problems are likely still the same. And change the oil, you're not going to have problems. So Eric Atkinson says, is there any information that you can send me on changing the transmission fluid in my 2017 manual V6 Tacoma? So it's very simple. There is a drain plug and there is a fill plug. And if I remember correctly, they were on the side of the transmission. We don't really see a lot of those for me to remember exactly where they're at. But you're going to open the fill plug first, drain the fluid, close it, fill it with gear oil until it overflows from the fill plug, and then put the fill plug, and that's about it. It's very simple. Short of copying the repair manual, which you can find at that website I put, it's really simple. I don't think it's worth it to find the repair manual. You can find any manual transmission drain and fill video, and it's basically going to be the same, just the locations are different, and that's about that. So Sue says, I have a 2018 RAV4 hybrid. My question is, can I upgrade my screen so that it picks up on my Android phone and uses Android Map on my phone? So you're referring to Android Auto. Unfortunately, through the dealership, through the official radio on the car, that is not possible. There's no such upgrade. If I remember correctly, the newer models had the Android Auto already. I'm looking into, is it possible to upgrade, newer radio to the older models, but I haven't gotten into it yet. But your only other option is something aftermarket. And unfortunately, I don't really know much about the aftermarket stuff. But from the dealership point, unfortunately, it's not possible. So AB, thank you so much for your super chat. 2012 Highlander dealer spark plug change. Gas mileage seems worse afterwards. No codes. I have a scan tool. Can I use a scan tool to see if it's running rich? Yes. If you have a scan tool that can read data, you can go in the scan tool, look at the fuel trims. If your fuel trims are in the negative, the car is running rich. However, one thing I will say, did they clean the throttle body? That's usually bundled up with the spark plug. I usually do it. Don't really tell the customer. I just clean it. It's coming out anyways. But if the throttle body hasn't been cleaned, try to clean it and see if that improves things. And bring it back to the dealership. It's possible that one of the spark plugs, didn't have the right cap. Something went south there where it's affecting your gas mileage. Bring it back to the dealership. Tell them, have them take a look. It wouldn't hurt. Maybe they left the vacuum hose off or something is going on. It wouldn't hurt to have them take a second look. Daniel Forrest, thank you so much for your super chat, sir. What is your opinion on 4Runner with the V8? Any trouble spots to watch for when buying one? Honestly, that V8 in the 4Runner, we're talking about for everybody else, the 4th generation 4Runner 2003 to 2009. That V8 is possibly one of the best V8s ever made, the 2UZ FE. It is, other than the timing belt and water pump every 90,000 miles or 9-10 years, you're really not going to have a lot of issues with that engine. Worst case scenario with that engine on the really older ones is a valve cover leaking. And if you're in the rust area, the other thing that is common on these is the exhaust manifolds. They break and they start making that rattling noise when they're cold, and then when the engine warms up, it kind of diminishes or it goes away. That's really the only problems with these. If you're not buying this from a rust area, likely the exhaust manifold situation is not going to be common, but very DIY, very simple engine, and truly, honest to God, reliable. It has an iron block. It is super reliable, terrible on gas, but super reliable. If you're not into the gas mileage race, but want something honest to God, simple, very reliable, that is the engine to get. And I wish Toyota still makes it, and they probably discontinued it because it's not great on emissions because it's very old. But yes, I think that's one of the highlight engines that Toyota makes. So let's take the next question. Bancroft says, I came on late. I have a 2021 Tundra, and when I let go of the steering wheel, the truck drifts to the right. Is this an alignment problem? So the first thing I would do is cross-rotate the front tires or just rotate front to back and see what happens. You would not believe how many pull issues that we get. that are caused by tires. Tires have something called kineticity. It is the tire's tendency to kind of drive the car off to one side. That's the first thing I would check. And yes, if it's not the tires, it could be an alignment issue. Not as likely if it's a heavy drift, but if it's a light drift or it slowly starts going to one side, it could be an alignment issue, and I'd have the dealership look at it because that's too new of a truck. It's definitely under warranty in that case. So, Belize Diver, this was a question we talked about a little bit with the 4Runner with no transmission fluid. I don't think you did a lot of damage. If you filled the fluid and everything's shifting fine, don't worry about it. You're okay. That thinking about what kind of damage you cause is not productive. If the transmission is shifting fine, you're good. Don't worry about it. So Nathan, on my 2007 FJ Cruiser has 10,000 mile oil changes at Toyota with Castrol synthetic blend oil. According to the records, how bad was this? This is what the previous owner did. So I don't think the 2007 FJ Cruiser should have had 10,000 mile oil changes, and it's not a good idea. Even if you put the best oil in the world, it's designed for 5,000 miles, and it's that engine, the previous generation 1GR, that is in your 07 FJ Cruiser, it's not known for oil consumption or oil problems because of bad oil change habits, but I would definitely consider running an oil cleaner in it and continue on with even 3,000 mile oil changes for a year or two, and then continue on with 5,000 miles conventional oil. Don't waste your money in synthetic. It's not required in that engine, and you should have no issues. So Tommy Cash, thank you for your super chat. Are Toyotas actually made in the US or just put together? That's a very good question. And to answer that, I will briefly take you on a journey to the Kentucky factory, where, by the way, if you are from Kentucky or visiting that area, a huge tourist attraction is the factory where Toyota at Kentucky, at I think Georgetown is the town where they're at. If you're ever in that area, you need to visit that. They actually offer a public tour. I don't know the pandemic if they still do that, but they offer a public tour where they take you inside and show you a few things. Not everything, but a few things. I had the privilege where Toyota took us on a trip and they showed us everything behind the scenes. And that factory is impressive because they don't just get the parts in a box and glue them together. They actually make everything in-house. Not 100% everything, but most of the stuff, starting with the body. Giant rolls of steel get stamped, get welded in these giant robots. So yes, they do make everything in-house. And almost everything. They have engine assembly, they have body welding, everything gets put back together. All these, so many parts get made there. Plastics get made there. So some of your electronics, no factory will make these. They will come from an outside supplier, but the main parts are made in Kentucky. Yes, so when they say made in the US, it could be actually almost everything is made in the US, and that's, I say this with pride. I am a North American. I am an American from the US, and I am very proud of the folks that work at all the plants across the US, Canada, and Mexico. Yes, some people have concerns over that, and I will leave that conversation for a future video talking exactly about that. So, Eric, thank you so much for your super chat. Do I need to quickly shift through gears quickly with the manual transmission after the transmission fluid drain and fill, or not? WS fluid. So there's no reason to shift from like the plus and minus, because that's really a computer generated. It's not, there's nothing moving inside the transmission. You just want to go from park, drive, neutral, and reverse. Mainly the drive and reverse is what circulates the fluid everywhere where it needs to go. Otherwise, that's really the only thing I would do when you're doing a transmission fluid. So go to rock. Thank you for your super chat. 2017 RAV4 got a plastic bag stuck on my exhaust every 6 months. Why does it keep happening? Best way to remove it instead of letting it burn off. That is, folks, if you've never had this happen to you, it is the worst thing in the world. And I am so sorry that this is happening to you. You likely live in an area or you drive by an area where they just have plastic garbage flying around. And this is really annoying. The only way to get it off is to grind it off, because usually it melts and just sticks so hard to the exhaust where it becomes near impossible to just yank it off. I would grind it lightly. Be very careful because you don't want to grind into the exhaust as well. But really, that's the only way to get it off. And as far as prevention, unfortunately, just happens when you see a bag flying down the street. Try to safely maneuver around it, otherwise they'll get stuck. Some of the RAV4s have a little bit of the exhaust hanging down, and I noticed RAV4s do get that somewhat more than other models because they have a part of the exhaust that hangs down, especially the catalytic converter, and just catches. It's so hot, and the plastic bag just comes around and sticks to it, and now it's stuck. So other than grinding it, unfortunately, there's not really a way to get it. One thing, and it's not very safe, but I'll say this: you can have the car really warmed up, and the catalytic converter will be hot. You got to be very careful. You can take a scraper and kind of start scraping it because it's hot and it's melting. You can scrape it off easier, but be very careful because the exhaust gets really hot. So Marcia Siste, thank you so much. The comment is, thank you all for your videos. They helped me buy my RAV4 hybrid. Thank you so much for your super chat, for watching my channel, and congratulations on your RAV4. I hope you are happy with it and it's treating you well. So folks, we are reaching, I do have a time constraint because I have to do something with my family, but we will take 3 more questions. I will take them randomly. Let's see here. So here's one for you guys for education purpose. So N6yon says, I have a 2011 Toyota Sienna 4-cylinder. That's the 1AR-FE that we talked about. 140,000 miles. I am burning 1.5 quarts every oil change. I don't see oil or light or signs of burning oil out of the tailpipe. What do I do to fix this? So everybody else, this is the classic sign of the 1AR, 2AR starting to burn oil. 1.5 quarts every oil change is not bad, but here's what you want to do. Run an oil cleaner on your next oil change. And if you, I don't know what your oil change schedule is, it cannot be more than 3,000 to 5,000 miles anymore, because this problem will get a lot worse if you don't become active on these oil changes. Run an oil cleaner. I can't recommend a specific brand, but Liqui Moly makes a good one. There's a lot of products out there. They all are made the same thing and they work the same, but run an oil cleaner. And for the next year, try to change the oil every 3,000 miles, 3 months, just to clean things up. And you're going to notice some improvement. I'm hoping you're going to notice some improvement. But the main thing is oil changes. After the year has passed with 3,000 3-month oil changes, switch it back to 5,000. Use quality oil. In that engine, it's going to need to be 020 full synthetic. Don't go heavier weight oil, and then that might mask your oil burning problem, but the actual problem is still there. Let's take the second to last question. Let's see here. So, a typical Jake. This is a good question, I think. Can you explain the fuel tank capacity issue with the 2020-2021 Highlander hybrid? Mine says it holds 17, but it seems to only hold about 14 with a full tank. My trip meter reads 359-mile range. So here's the problem, and this is partly on Toyota. I'll just say this out loud. This is not sponsored by anybody, or I can say whatever I want. This is partly on Toyota because they have a huge reserve. They say it's a 17-gallon tank, but what's actually accessible is usually always less than that, and that's on them because they shouldn't really announce it like that. They should try to say the capacity is something, the usable, like the full capacity is this, but the usable capacity is this. It's not an issue. It's more of a communication thing. They're trying to make these fuel tanks smaller and smaller because the smaller fuel tank, the less weight. Fuel weighs a lot. And the smaller fuel tank, the less fuel you have in it, the less weight, the better gas mileage you get. That's where they're going with this, and it kind of bit them with the RAV4. But now we're seeing it in a lot of models. Folks, there's no problem with these. They just have a large reserve. That's how they are. And I am with you. It's annoying, but that's what they're trying to. The fuel tanks are getting smaller and smaller because that's, again, the EPA is on their case. They're trying to get better gas mileage, and the less weight they have in these cars, the more gas mileage you're getting. So that's the result of that. Because I think a Highlander should get a bigger tank than a 17-gallon, but they're dropping, and actually the 17-gallon is only taking 14, 15 at the max, and that's normal. That's just the way it is with these new cars, unfortunately. 2003 Tacoma, Johnny444, thank you for your super chat. I will take these 2 super chat questions, then we'll get to the, actually 3 now, and then we'll get to the last question. So 2003 Tacoma, 2RZ, sorry, not 2ZR, big difference, 2.4 liter. It only takes 4 quarts of oil to the full mark, but documentation says 5.7. Have you seen this issue, changing the filter and full drain? Now, that's interesting. But I don't remember it taking 5.7. I think that was the 2Rs. I'm trying to remember the engines here. But I think you're talking about the engine that followed, the 2TR takes 5.7. I will have to look into this one, honestly. But go with the full mark. That's the best advice I can give you. Always go with the full mark more than what the engine actually takes on a paper, because it's more important that the engine in front of you has a full level, not what the paper says. So Goku to Rock, 2017 Camry, LE brakes making a noise, thinking about replacing rotors and pads. Seen a lot of brands online, but not many reviews. What brand do I get? So honestly, stick with a brand that you know. If you don't know brands and you don't want to take chances, stick with OEM. Get the economy pads and call it a day. Rotors, I can't really recommend specific brands aftermarket. I don't really deal a lot with aftermarket, but Power Stop is okay. Akibono is okay. They're a little bit pricey though, but there's a lot of brands that you can go with. But the main thing is, don't buy the cheapest ones on eBay. $11 rotors are $11 rotors, and usually with rotors you'll end up getting pretty close. If you shop around, go to parts.toyota.com. You could shop for the OEMs for pretty close to aftermarket, actually. So shop around is the biggest thing. I really can't recommend a specific brand where I can tell you this is the best, better than OEM, and this and that. Okay, so let me see here. Okay, so let's take the last question. But before we do, I want to say one thing. If you're watching this live stream at this moment, give this video a thumbs up for me. And another thing is, somebody has sent me an email, and I have not responded to them, but I will respond right now. Somebody says, do I take sponsors? Do I, some people gotten upset when I reviewed a few products, and I gave them my endorsement. But I want to say this for my viewers, just so you guys would know this. This entire channel is sponsored by me. All the blood, sweat, and tears that I put in this industry, working on cars every day, which is a hard industry to be in. It takes a toll on your health, back, everything. But I do this for you guys, and I don't think I will take any sponsors. And a lot of the emails I get are from sponsors trying, oh, would you review this product? Would you put our thing name? But I don't like sponsors because they just dilute the channel, if you would. I just want to tell you my honest to God opinion. If you like it, we agree on, great. If you don't like it, you don't agree on it, great too. That's okay. But I don't like sponsors because I think they dilute opinion, and that's a gray area that I don't like. I just like to keep things honest, simple, straight to the point, and keep it simple. I am not some people have mentioned, YouTubers are these celebrities, blah blah blah. I'm not. I'm just an average Joe. I love you guys, and I want the best for you. Yes, I do get some compensation through the ads, whatever, but the main thing is I help you with what I know, because then you hopefully will turn around and help me with what you know in other areas, because we are all hardworking people and we all have a specialty in something. And I encourage everyone to start a channel. If you are a professional and you have the time and the ability to do it, start a channel, help people out. It's the best thing in the world. So having said that, I will take the last question. The last is always first. So let's take this one. The Dreamer. Greetings from Toronto. I've been using regular oil on my 2009 Camry V6 and wondering if I should change to synthetic oil or just leave it. Also, is Pennzoil oil better than Mobil 1? So honestly, I wouldn't, because if you change your oil on time, 3,000 to 5,000 miles, just stay with conventional oil. Why waste your money on synthetic? There's not really, and on that engine, there's not a huge benefit. And Pennzoil, Mobil 1, Castrol, they're all good. Honestly, they're all good. Mobil 1 seems to be a little bit more friendly with Toyotas because they're the same company that makes the official oil, but honestly, they're all good. Just don't overpay for oil, thinking you're going to get 15,000, 20,000 miles out of the oil changes, and change it on time. That's more important than synthetic, conventional, all this stuff. If your car calls for synthetic oil, which yours doesn't, but just for everybody else, if your car calls for synthetic oil, then do use synthetic. But if it calls for conventional, choose conventional and save your money for more oil changes, which will actually do better for your car over time than the fancy oil that lasts 15,000 miles. Guys and ladies, thank you so much for joining the live stream. I hope it was helpful. And I came back from vacation and I did this live stream just to catch up and see how you guys are doing, answer some questions. I hope you learned something new from this live stream. I am trying to make this live stream more often because I enjoy talking to you guys directly, helping you guys out directly. And I know I'm trying to keep up with the emails and the social media. It's a little much with family and everything, but I try my best here because the intention of this channel is always to help you and not have some second agenda. My only agenda is to help you, and I hope God helps me carry this message through. Until the next live stream and the next video, guys, may the Lord bless you and keep you, and you guys have a wonderful day.